turn off your microphone. Turn off your microphone so that background noise doesn't come in. And Carmen, continue to give us your wisdom, please.
Okay, well, actually this session is more participatory because at this stage, everybody has has a good idea of what UN does, how it came from, what's the stage it's in. And now we have to kind of like decide how to participate within. Carol, can you help me sharing my screen? Please.
No, Karen would help you.
Oh, Karen, sorry.
Karen. Karen, can you make Carmen host? Or I'm sure she's working on it.
Mm.
Yeah, you should have it now. Do you have it?
Yes. So I hope you can all see my screen right now. What we were talking last week was on how do we engage as civil society? And we spoke about the different kinds of public participation. So we have to decide in which of this we want to actually be. We have to decide what kind of engagement we want. If it's only information, it's fine. We can start by subscribing to many of the bulletins or newsletters that UN has in the different issues that are going to help us be informed of what's going on in UN. The other way is participating in the online consultations. And the third one is being involved, that is getting the information, but also doing something as a response to the information. Those are kind of like the three levels I would recommend for us, that we have to discuss which one we want to, in which level we want to be. Any of them, it's good. But of course, the first one, our level of involvement is low. That means that we don't put much effort to it. We just read whatever is coming, and we can disseminate that information among our communities. But our capacity of influence is going to be quite low. Then the other one is the dialogue, well, actually it's a consultation here. I don't know why it's turned around. The consultation where we also will get the information, but also we answer to some of the online consultations. And the other one is the dialogue. I just noticed that this is turned around, where we have a greater chance of influence, but it also takes much more effort to be involved. So that is one of the discussions I want to have right now. And the other one is what processes we want to be involved, because we do have CSW. I could suggest CSW and Agenda 2030, so we don't get involved in too many processes. And when we talk about Agenda 2030, we have to speak about the 17 goals. Probably we're not going to be able to cover the 17 goals, but we can work in one or two, which is perfectly fine. And so I would like to know what your expectations are, how you see it, if how much work you want to give to this, how involved you want to be. And that's where I want to listen to most of you, your opinions and what your your points of view are.
Carmen, are there specific consultations coming up?
I'm sure that if we look right now, we're going to find a consultation. For example, first week of September, there is a consultation for UNEA, which is the UN Environmental Assembly. But with time, we will have more about the consultations.
Is CSW actually a consultation?
It has a part which is a consultation.
Okay.
CSW is a process.
Carmen, I think everyone else can chime in and let me know if I've got this right. But it's my understanding that we wanted this discussion with you because IWC, we have consultative status with the UN, but it's like, how can we use that? How can we be more effective and more involved? I mean, we have this status, and how can we better use it? That's kind of what my understanding is of what we wanted to do here. I don't know if everyone else agrees with that or not.
Having the consultation status means that we are right now, right here. We don't need to get much involved, but when they have a question for civil society, they're going to send probably a survey to all of us, asking us, what do you think if UN should, for example, intervene in Afghanistan?
Uh-huh.
So that's an example of a kind of consultation that UN can do to the organizations that have the ECOSOC.
Carol, have we ever gotten this kind of request from the UN?
Most of the times they pass how you say it, inadvertent. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, because it's a survey that probably you get in your email, and since it's nothing appealing, probably you don't answer.
It
And
would not come to me, it would come to Karen.
Yeah.
Because she's the named person on our.
But anyone can answer, and there are surveys that also they may be in Facebook or in social media, and depending on the issue. And
yeah, I want to respond to Beth's comment about consultative status, because it's my impression that consultative status simply means that we as an organization have access to things such as, starting with CSW. There are 9,000 or 10,000 organizations in consultative status. So we went through this 2-year process to qualify us to move to the next level. But beyond that, it's kind of up to us, I guess, and that's why we're here. So the consultative status per se is only an imprimatur on the organization to do more. Ellen, is VFW in consultative status? VFP?
Veterans for Peace is not in consultative status for 2 reasons. One is that, except for me, there's not that much real do stuff interest in the organization. I'm not going to do it alone. And number 2, unfortunately, our primary focus is stopping war, and that's under the Security Council, not under ECOSOC. So we don't really fit. So.
Okay.
no,
But that's a helpful clarification for us of, of how some things work.
Yeah.
Well, I just found out, for example, this consultation, which is Global Youth Survey for World Youth Report 2021. And that's, that's usually for the youth constituency. but then they have all this, the background information, and then how to participate in the survey. So that happens with different issues at different times, and it can be, we could also kind of like within for example, for women, they can also ask for some inputs in specific issues. So those are kind of like the process of the consultations, and they are ongoing, unrolling all year long in different issues. The thing is that we focus in some issues that are important for us. For example, if one of us is really into mental health, for example, probably that person will be interested in participating from this consultation. But yeah, CSW, the way we participate is we can address the commission with specific issues. For example, next year, the priority theme is achieving gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. And the overview theme is women's economic empowerment in changing the world of work. And here you can find, for example, the agreed conclusions. And this is the part where we can, we get this document, which is the official resolution that came out from UN. So it's women's economic empowerment in changing the world of work. The agreed conclusion, the Commission of the Status of Women reaffirms the Beijing Declaration and the Platform for Action, the outcome document of the 23rd Special Session of the General Assembly, and the declaration adopted by the Commissions of the Oceans of the occasion of the 10th, 15th, and 20th anniversary of the World Work Conference. This is the hard part, because that means we have to check all these documents to see what they say. And that's the, and then the Commission reiterates the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is the CEDAW, the CEDAW Conventions on the Rights of Children, and the optional protocols of Theoreto, as well as other relevant conventions. So these are all the documents that we have to consult only to understand these two paragraphs. So once we read the whole document, if we are in the plan of information, it's good. We know what the position is of UN and of CSW to work women and work. We're not going to go because it's a little bit long. And then it's we can disseminate that information saying, okay, UN has agreed on the economic empowerment of women by this. The other way that is, since we have a consultative status, is that we can read this document, and if there is something that we are not do not agree on, we can have this space opportunities for NGOs to address the Commission. And then we can send the Commission our points of view, our recommendations, or whatever we feel that it's needed to improve that document. That's what the NGOs with ECOSOC status can do, that the other NGOs that do not have ECOSOC cannot do. And of course, participate in the whole process, because you need to be able to go to UN, to participate from the meetings, to follow up what the documents are going on, and so on.
Let's talk about CEDAW for just a minute. You brought that up as an example. CEDAW was adopted a while back. The US has not ratified it.
Yeah.
One element of organization that we could do, it has to do with getting the US to ratify it or get cities or states involved in it as well. That's something I picked up that some organizations are doing. But does CEDAW continue? Does it continue to develop? I mean, is there? Do we just need to read what was passed in the 1980s, or are there more embellishments and changes on something like that?
There are. This is a process that depends on the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, which is the office in Geneva. And yeah, the basic document is the one approved in 79, and still, well, USA has not signed, but it has parties to the convention and so on, and they meet. I'm not sure if it's each year or every 2 years, but they meet. Well, here's all the information. I want to see if I find next meetings. So this one's kind of like a sub process, because it's the process of human rights that go in United Nations in the Office of Geneva, which is it has the aim to guarantee human rights in everywhere. So that's why they have the UPRs, which are the Universal Periodic Reports. So here's right now the committee has 23 experts, and these are the countries that have signed, and in blue the ones that have not signed, which is US. And yeah, you can find all the information related to. But although, well, for CSW, many of the times we're going to have to to go back to this document, basically, and to this process in order to see the advance of women.
I actually went to a workshop during CSW this year from a group called Cities for CEDAW, which is engaged with bringing the CEDAW accords to cities and urging cities to, I guess, adopt. I mean, probably it's not the same thing as, you can't really sign on, but that was sort of interesting. And there are many US cities, both big cities and medium-sized cities, that are in some kind of process in that way. And again, that is not influencing the UN to change CEDAW, but it is using the UN document of CEDAW to change localities.
Yes, because what's the issue with cities? Cities have been designed for basically men. So transportation means and so on are focused on men. How do men go to work? Where do they go to work? So all the traffic lines, for example, they respond to that. Even when I was in New York Metro, they were telling me the story that it was designed so when workers would go to work, they would have a space to commute among them, for example. But cities don't usually take into account women that have to take their kids to school, or they have to do groceries and so on. So that's where you have the discrimination part of cities. And in order to have more effective cities, you need to take into account the needs of the women as well as the needs for men. But most of the cities were designed in 20th century, basically the 19th, 20th century, not really design, but because they designed some of the parts like highways and things, but not really taking into account these issues. And of course, during the first part of the 20th century, women wouldn't drive a car or take kids to school or nothing like that. So that's why they weren't taken care of. But right now in the world that we are, sorry, we need to take to see those needs also fulfilled. So it's complicated because it also has in a world with traffic jams and so on, is how do you take all these other variants into the equation?
So
that's
Carol,
why,
excuse me a minute. Carol, I'm confused. What is this document that the US has not signed on to?
CEDAW, I mean, it's what we're talking about here. We have, the US hasn't signed on to a lot of things.
What is,
The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination and Against Women is the name of it.
Thank you, Julie. I was
thank you.
realizing I couldn't tell you that.
I mean,
Sorry.
using the acronyms, you know, we're not all conversant in the acronyms.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I actually looked it up, and one of the things that came up here on, the Google drop downs is why hasn't the United States? And the first answer goes back to 2011 about conflicts between the Republicans and Democrats about support for the United Nations in general, and also women's rights. So, it's internal politics, at least going back then. There's another long piece here on why hasn't the United States done that, and I haven't read that yet. So
Well,
maybe Carol, why the United
I just have a general sense that the US has not signed on to a lot of things because of mostly Republican, because of conservative objections to the UN in general, not wanting the UN to tell us what we're supposed to do. And so yeah, go ahead.
No, but that's one of the things of US. When US does what it says, which is not something all governments do. And in the case of discrimination against women, it's because, Black Lives Matter was very clear that there's still discrimination, race-based discrimination in US. So if they are discriminating men, then how can they not discriminate women? Kind of like that is the logic put in very simplistic words. And US doesn't sign what they are not going to do, because they kind of like want to set the example in UN, which is because you have other countries that have signed CEDAW, for example, Muslim or Arab, Muslim, Islam countries that still discriminate women in so many ways, but they are signed up to CEDAW.
Yeah, I actually have heard a lot of discussion on CEDAW from our colleagues in the Philippines, and Philippines have signed on long ago to CEDAW, but the discrimination against women is still major there. There are so many of these things that actually the United States does. I mean, certainly the United States discriminates against women, but we are ahead of other countries that, have signed on to this this document, and we haven't.
Yeah, I would like to.
I don't know.
Which actually raises the point. What's the point of putting energy into that if it's all about words and not about action?
Can I just jump in for a second and change the course of the conversation?
Thank you.
When I've been thinking about thank you, Carmen, you've done an absolutely outstanding job. And I know I speak for everybody when we greatly appreciate it. When I think about the most influence that UUs, and particularly the UNO office, has had at the UN was back in the late 1990s when the International Criminal Court was being established. And the office, the UUs were asked to go to Rome to participate in the establishment of the International Criminal Court. And as a result of that, and at that time, John Washburn was the executive director. He chose 2 Canadian UUs to represent us because his feeling, probably right, is that if he sent Americans, they wouldn't be listened to. But the Canadians have a kind of respect that Americans do not. And as a result of that, Paul Reinhardt, who was one of our representatives and a very prominent judge in Canada, literally wrote the statutes for the International Criminal Court as they relate to children. And what he wrote basically was passed with very little changes. So, that's when we really, really had a lot of influence. And when I thought about all of that, we got the influence because we developed an expertise in some area. And I'm very new to this organization, but when I look at it, and I went to this CSW, conference, we really have around the world a lot of expertise in domestic violence. There are 3 different programs that are run in very different ways that are effective. And so I was thinking that in order to get some impact into ECOSAC, if we sort of, in addition to climate, which, we have a lot of expertise because of Carmen and she's already involved, if we developed a set of expertise based on what we were already doing, and some that we would gain more influence and maybe get invited to one of these conferences where we would have actual input because we were known for these programs. That was sort of my thought over the past week.
I think that's a brilliant analysis, Genya.
Thank you, Genya. I really good to hear that
Yeah.
that view. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I would like
agree.
to respond to what Carol said about the Republicans. I don't think we can blame the fact that we do not pass any of these treaties on Republicans, because our entire political system, the Republicans and the Democrats, are like Carmen said, if we pass a treaty, we are gonna make sure that we're gonna implement these changes. And the Democrats and the Republicans are beholden more to corporate interests, and they're worried about the cost of implementing these things. And that's why they don't pass these treaties. And so I don't think it really has anything to do with Republicans and Democrats. I think it has to do with our capitalist culture.
Well, it's not only that, it's that US also has a high level of population that is well educated, which doesn't happen in other developing countries, for example. So many countries that have signed this treaty, women don't know how to read. So how are they going to do what this treaty says? So it goes even deeper than just saying that it's a question about Republicans and Democrats. It's about empowering civil society. So if civil society knows what is happening, and that's a good thing about UN, we don't see UN only by countries and the particular political problems by countries, although we can do those analyses, but as a global society composed by almost 200 countries, because UN works under consensus, and consensus means like the majority. So the majority of the population has already agreed on this on this convention. And of course, civil society has the means to, if not implement it fully, at least to know it. And then if we see that something is not going, it's not right, if, for example, a woman is denied a bank loan because of she's a woman, then you say, well, my country has signed CEDAW, and it means that I have the right to get a bank loan, or things like that. So that is important to know these treaties and to how you say it, take it to the basic levels, so people know what these treaties say, because many of them are really progressive. But then since the UN cannot fully enforce implementation of these treaties, because it's basically voluntary will of each country, so voluntary political will of each country, most of these things do not happen. But the document is there, and that's why it's important, our role, because we need to see ways into either enforce it or make it better.
Which is a good answer to Julie's question about, are the words really important? They are, but it takes a long time and goes on forever to get in line with the words.
You know, I'd really like to go back to Genya's brilliant analysis here about the.
Well, I want to, yes, I want to get there too. I just did want to make sure that there was an answer to your question, which I think was a good one. And yeah, it's not just blaming it on Republicans, blaming it on US spirit of capitalism that keeps us from going along with some of these things.
But I think the issue of our expertise, which she has so well
I agree.
identified, is something that we should be looking at in terms, you know, we have Carmen's expertise in climate change, and we have our program expertise in domestic violence, and how we can leverage that expertise into more effective impact.
So the question, one question is, where is domestic violence in all of this? Is it
It's you and women. It's you and women. It's one of the generation equality goals.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, when we did the programs on education at the UN, Every Child is Our Child, and then when I did my own nonprofit, Educating Every Child, we linked what we were doing to the Millennium Development Goals. And that gives you essentially a lot of credibility, because you can talk about the program as a linkage to what the UN is doing. And we found like with Every Child is, and we purposely did that. You know, it addressed education, it addressed health issues for children because they needed education. It also addressed AIDS, because a lot of the children that were being educated, which their parents had died of AIDS, they were AIDS, orphans. So if we look at what we're doing in domestic violence and doing a real analysis of each program, and then look at the new sustainable development, I forget what they were, the technical name, but the next set of development goals, we can link them to that.
Okay. I know that we're, I say a lot of the time, we're working on goal number 5. I know that, but what do you mean more by linking? What exactly do you mean by linking to a goal?
Well, when you talk about, you look at the program, right? And then you look at the goals, and you see, you read the goals carefully, and you read what your program does carefully. And you just said, well, we're doing number 5, but we could also be doing impacting 3 or 4 others. So when you talk about the program, you talk about it in a way that says, this is what we're accomplishing by this. It's not just, women's equity, whatever we're accomplishing. I mean, a lot of research and analysis has to go into this, but the primary work of actually developing the programs, which is the hard work, and touting its success is, the rest of it is analysis, but that's the easy part. We've already done the hard
And we've
part.
done that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, this is the SDGs webpage, and everything you're going to see here, the goals, but you can see here, second global sustainable
We're not
trans.
seeing it, Carmen, we're not seeing it.
What?
We're not
Yeah,
seeing the
It's not
page.
changed. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I've been. Oh, here, this is the SDGs webpage. So here, it's always every activities, it's got their goals that it's related to. But for example, what we were talking, here you have the second global sustainable transport conference, but it doesn't take into account goal 5, which is how women use transport. So if you don't take into account women's participation, that means that transport is going to be still men's driven. But yeah, it's our main goal can be 5, but of course the activities we are going to do are going to maybe be related with another goal. And probably it's going to many of the times be related to goal 16, which is promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. So yeah, I would say that most of the work is going to be focused on goal 5, which is achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls, and the part of promoting peaceful and inclusive societies.
Uh-huh.
And yes, the activities always have like what related goal. Probably we're going to have 5 and 6 if we're doing something on water, or 5 and 4 if we're doing education, and so on.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay, and what page is that, Carmen, are you on? It's the web page is
Let me put it in the chat.
SD, okay, SDGS, okay, got it.
Yeah.
SDGS UN.org.
And I'm putting
Sustainable
also
de-
the
Sustainable Development Goals, got it, yeah.
CEDAW page and the CSW. So yeah, the thing is that, for example, for CSW, the basic document, one of the basic documents is the CEDAW, the convention, what the convention says. And are you seeing the CEDAW web, the CEDAW webpage right now?
Right. Yes.
Mhm.
So you have this introduction, which is quite long and complete, the state parties to the convention, and then you have the agreements, which is Article 1, Article 2, and so on, which talks about the different kinds of discrimination toward women. So it's this is going to be a basic document for CSW, but also the Declaration of Beijing. So it's a number of documents that we're going to have to be related, that it's complex, and because there are so many documents, it's hard. You have to learn it by practice, by participating and reading the documents that you need at that time. And sometimes you don't have to read the whole document, only the articles that are related to what you want to achieve.
And how does all this relate to participation in women's major group?
Well,
Actually, I just want to point out something on the screen that caught my attention here. Under latest news, the third paragraph, ending violence against women in Uganda takes a step forward with critical law reforms passed in parliament. That's an example of tying in the elements of the SDGs to a local action. So those are the kinds of things we should be paying attention to.
exactly. Because yeah, we have that's why our activities can be linked to either this the CEDAW or the development, the Agenda 2030, the SDGs. So for example, what we want to do is to work on women empowerment in developing world in Philippines, let's say. So how are we going to do it? We're going to do it by finding new source of income and by promoting this industry that they're doing, so we can link it to goal number 5, probably the goal number 8, which is decent jobs, and goal number 12, which is sustainable production and consumption. And that's how we can use all these documents to justify our work and to contribute to achievement of these goals or these conventions, because that's kind of like our role. But
Good health and well-being too. That's another area.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the project in Cochabamba, for example, that Aaron Beasley was involved with, and they talked about on our parallel event. That's an example of women's empowerment and economic engagement, as well as climate change action.
Yes, and that's why in this webpage there is the good practice. If you enter here, you can put your, let's say we have done a project, the project of empowerment of women for climate change. Then you can submit it as a good practice, and UN can have it in their database. For this period, I think it was closed, yeah, 14th of March, but it's going to be open for next period for 2020. So that usually this is the call, and they want to they do a compilation of success stories and lessons learned in the SDG implementation. That's one way of participating, let's say.
Wow, okay, so this is, again, what
That's
is
good.
this? This is, I think we should do this. This is
Yes. SDG
interesting.
good practices.
Right, and I
Okay.
also want to lift up Genya's example of the Canadian who went and actually wrote the document that, as she said, didn't get changed very much. Any of us who've been secretaries, minute takers, know the power of writing. So if you write something, you know, because not everybody has the skills to do the writing, you know, it doesn't get changed very often. So this is an opportunity to get, I think we're seeing a pathway here of submitting the good practices, these programs, and then, looking for opportunities to participate in actual conferences or workshops where those kinds of activities, writing, get done.
Yeah.
Because also the women's major group has a prize, because this is only for publication. They get your story, because they have to select here, I think they got 400 good practices, and they have to select which ones are going to be in the publication. But the women's have a prize of like $10,000, I think it is, for a good practice stories or projects.
Wow.
Hmm.
So can we look and see an example of good practices that have been submitted?
First, let's see for this one. Where is the? Okay, because this is the publication. And here you can download it. It's downloading, I don't know where, but it's downloading.
Yeah.
This is the summary. Because I imagine that the
Good practices database there. It's a bit.ly.
yeah, they have sent 500 approved good practices, and this is how many in each of the goals. We can see that most of them are in building peace, but second, we have women's empowerment, and good practices, 26% were by government, 17 were private sector, 20 civil society, and so on. Some of the examples, for example, Help Age International with local partners established 1,500 intergenerational self-help clubs to take care of Vietnam's most marginalized and vulnerable members, such as the elderly and minorities, to harness the willingness of community members to support each other through times. And then we have Fit for School programs, help ensure adequate hygiene, water and sanitations for schools in Cambodia. Then City Prosperity Index in Mexico, Eco Energy in Finland to find energy produced through high sustainable means. The Indigenous Navigator. Oh,
Do you know that group, Carmen?
No, I don't. And I didn't heard about the Indigenous Navigator before, which is interesting. And then you have the Enhancer of Rural Resilience in Yemen, and so on. Of course, these are the big programs by big NGOs or big UN agencies, but still we can send our good practices and our lessons learned because as you see, they're not only big projects, like for example, the Fit for School program. I don't think it is a big program because it's only like for one country and so on. So it's interesting to see all these experiences and learn from them.
It would be useful for us just to write it up too. I mean, the good practices model of putting together what we've learned and publish it in other ways, but to submit it here would be a really good thing.
I think this is a document to have kind of like an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, seeing a sample or a model would be a good thing for us to start with.
So
They do
here's
it by region.
community-based animal health workers, guardians for quality localized animals, health services in hard-to-reach livestock production systems. This is in South Sudan. The webpage, the entity Global Multi-Stakeholders Partnership, which means that probably you have a UN agency, you have NGOs, and you have, oh, here are the key partners. You have FAO, you have the Ministry of Animal Resources and Fishery, you have Sudan's Veterinary Association, Food Security and Livelihood Cluster, Intergovernmental Authority of Development, African Union, Inter-African Bureau, Animal Resources, and so on. And the relevant SDGs are 1, 2, and 3. And then there is the brief summary. The impact of COVID. And then you have another example, which is providing legal aid to detainees suspect on terrorist cases. UNDOC project to strengthen criminal justice in Niger, which is also a multi-stakeholder program. And how many pages this has? 71 pages. We can see an example in another part of the world.
I think it would be helpful to see an example of a civil society organization rather than a governmental agency.
Well, actually, these are most of them are partnerships. You have the small NGO that is working with other big agencies. Let's say we start this project of empowering women in Cochabamba, and then we get the help of UN or UNICEF to support us, and that's how it becomes a multi-stakeholders partnership. So this one is the self-help clubs that they mention in the summary, which is HelpAge, the NGO that's leading. And yeah, HelpAge could include these other networks or NGOs like the Vietnam Associations of Elderly, Vietnam Women's Unions, the state government's agencies, but it doesn't say which ones, and other relevant organizations who provide technical and funding support. But basically, this is a project of HelpAge, which is an NGO.
They seem to be divided by regions. I wonder if there's any examples of international. I mean, like where our association is international. So if we wanted to.
Oh, yes, but the program that we are going to usually send is the one that you're going to do in one place. Let's say you have this project in Cochabamba to empower women. Then you're going to send, even though we're international, the program of Cochabamba. Or if we have a program in Philippines, then we're going to send the project that we have done in Philippines.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, but like Guinea was saying that if we were to approach the UN as with our expertise in domestic violence, well, that cuts across. We have programs in several parts of the world that address that. But I guess in this case, we'd have to write about each, as you say, each program separately.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we need to do sort of a lot of research, but I would see the advantage of the fact that if we lump the 3 programs, although we do them separately, but if you submit it as a best practice and you show that in each area, the different things that work, and it has to be sort of specific to the area to make the program work, and then get sort of common elements, I think we could write a wonderful best practice. I mean, it takes a lot of research and in-depth knowledge of exactly what makes the program work and what the metrics are. But I think we have enough expertise in this group to be able to do that.
No, yes, because these are like the ones that they compile, but in the database of the SDGs, they have the 400 programs or projects that have been submitted. So those are for taking into account. So if you need some more specific knowledge, then you're going to be able to access that. I'm not sure how, but this one's the Indigenous Navigator generating disaggregated Indigenous community data to achieve the SDGs. And this one is Africa, Cameroon, Kenya, Tanzania, Asia, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Nepal, Philippines, and Latin America, Bolivia, Colombia, Peru, and Suriname.
Okay, so that is definitely international. Yeah.
Yeah.
Geographical
But-
coverage.
But
Yeah.
you know, we would be, I mean, it would be quite possible to list a lot of collaborators for our with us on projects on domestic
Right.
violence.
Right, yeah.
The local organizations, even some in Philippines, the barangays, the towns get involved as well. So
Right.
even there are governmental units in that
And so
area.
in India also, in India
Yes.
also they have relations with the regional government there.
Hmm.
And the
That's right.
school system,
Yeah.
and the school system.
Yes.
This gives us a good lens to look at these programs. Very,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I like this.
So let me see if I can find the Women's Prize that I don't remember the exact name of the prize. I think it's this one. I hope you're seeing it. This is a
Yeah.
publication.
Yes.
Just climate solutions.
This is for climate, but what they did is they had this prize for the women that had well, this is one of the stakeholders for the Climate Change Convention. And I think these solutions, oh no, I don't think this is a prize, but they have a prize that no, I don't think this is a prize, but they have a $10,000 prize for women that can that have good solutions. Here it is, Gender Just Climate Solutions Award. The women and gender constituency, we know solutions are more sustainable future already exists. It's time to showcase them far and wide. So it's under technical climate solutions, not technical climate solutions, and transformational climate solutions. They have received 158 applications. These were the selected criteria, and these are the jury, and these are the winners.
Great.
African Kitchen Revolution, training women on transformable mud building techniques. Mud brick, yeah. The other one's integrated waste management system to promote food and energy security among Mayan indigenous women. In Mexico, women-led energy efficient agricultural model and rice zones in Chicamocha Canon in Colombia. This one's in Uganda, Usurku women surviving to climate impact through sustainable reforestation and low emitting stoves. This one's organic farm, empowering women for sustainable climate resilience food production. This one's in Togo. Togolese women from farming facing increased drought investment in resilient agroforestry. And what are the non-technical solutions? Women as seeds of conservation and agroecology experts helping their communities resist climate change. This is for India and France.
No, so notice that's two different countries.
Yes,
Two
they
different
probably
areas
support us.
altogether, like we are.
Yeah. So these are examples of things that can be submitted. And the good thing is this one does have a price in cash, because the other one, it's only for supporting UN-based database, which is also important. But yeah, it's Acacia for All, women fighting the certification by planting acacia plants. And yeah, these are very interesting projects, like innovative business model, local female vendors phasing out of kerosene lights in energy poor communities in Madagascar. Climbing back the streets of Sao Paulo, a biking collective training for women, and so on. And there is the other category, which I don't remember what it's called, but
Here it is, transformational.
solutions, yeah. Gender assessment of non-timber forest production and capacity building in northern uploads of Lao. Restoring biodiversity in community forests by planting caterpillar trees in Congo.
Okay, so the subsequent ones here aren't identified as winners. So there's only one $10,000 award for each and each one of these categories. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's also good to highlight what women are doing, what women have submitted to the prize, and how it's working.
Right.
Now you have here Nepal, Myanmar, United States, empowered generation, combating gender inequalities and energy poverty through women-led social business. And so on. You have all these different projects that have been submitted.
International. Here's an international one.
Yeah, it's CEDAW.
Ah, okay.
The women's leadership in climate diplomacy and action. Actually, it's what we do in the Convention of Climate Change, that is advocating for policies for women's rights and gender equality in the Convention of Climate Change.
Carmen, are these organizations that have submitted this, are they in consultative status, or can they not be in consultative status but have signed on to be a major stakeholder? Is there a difference?
For this prize, this is all civil society for this prize, so I don't think you need a consultative status to send the projects.
You can sign on as a stakeholder then, or submit it as okay.
So yeah, but probably for this one, it's more ECOSOC based, because yeah,
Okay.
But as the agenda, when we were advocating for the agenda, one of the important things was that to break the scheme of north-south and top-bottom approach, which was the one stable in the Millennium Development Goals. So for this one, what we wanted was that anybody was a more bottom-up approach, and that really the people on ground could contribute to the agenda. So you don't really necessarily need to have a ECOSOC status to send your success story. But yeah, those are some of the ways we can participate, and we can have a more outreach with our work. And the other one is engaging in the women's major group for climate, for the Agenda 2030, and the NGO CSW for advocating in the CSW because that's how our actions are going to be are going to help contribute achieving these conventions, these goals, these agendas. But the other part is where we advocate. So as we were saying, the priority theme for next year is going to be women and girls in climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction. So for example, if we want to have a side event, we can partner with some members to have a side event on climate change and women, let's say. So that's kind of like how it works.
But a side event, do you mean a side event or a parallel event?
We can have a side event or a parallel event.
A side event involves governmental engagement.
Usually the official side events for any of these
That's the way I had sort of figured it out, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, the side events usually have a sponsorship from one of the governments.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're in the advocacy field and you go to the meetings and you know the representatives, it's easier to get some government to support your side event. Not always, but most of the time you need that, because that will give more highlight. And the thing about having a side event is trying to have governments, our government representatives, to hear what you have to say.
Listen, yeah.
And the parallel event is something that it's not official, probably won't come in the lists, but you can do something to highlight your work on climate change and gender, for example. And now that is online, because before you wanted to have a parallel event, then you would have to, I don't know, go to one of these big hotels in New York and ask for a room, and like, or probably in the church center, and then invite people and have people to come to your event and fix good food, because that's an important part when you have a
Exactly, yeah.
I'm joking, but now that is online, you can have parallel events which are online that have a wider outreach if you want to share specific issues. Right. Let's say you want to share your work, or you want to have a workshop involving more voices from our networks, our communities, to engage, to one of our projects, or to support our projects, or to highlight the results of our project. Because, for example, in the last in the last high-level political forum, we organized a side event where we were able to present the documents we did on the studies on mercury here in Bolivia. So it's important to use these spaces to show also our work.
And you had support, I mean, did you have Bolivian support on that?
Yes.
Okay.
But not from the official government. I asked, since it was online, I asked a deputy from here, from Bolivia, to participate. So she was online and she gave her comments. And also the good thing about Zoom is that you can have the translators that, so the discussion between many languages, it's a bit easier. Because the other way is you do the side event in New York and only the people that are in New York are going to go. And then your outreach is quite small. So it's something that is shifting and that we can get an advantage on.
Right, exactly.
Yes, yes.
I think we could get Philippine support to do a side event. I think we could network our way to that. We've had some contact with various Philippine officials. Right, Phyllis? So that's an
Phyllis, you're
exciting
muted.
thought.
Stepped away from the computer. What was the question?
Oh, we were talking about having side events as opposed, I mean, in addition to parallel events, and needing governmental engagement to do a side event. And I think Philippines might, we might find a way to do that through Philippine engagement.
I don't, I know the first year you and I went, we met the actual Philippine representative to the United Nations. And there was somebody in his office who gave us a card, and then she contacted me the next year. So we may have a record with them already that we could follow up if we wanted to do something. It might be worth it to reach out.
Well, Chris Nielsen has that contact even more recently, Phyllis. Didn't she have a meeting or some event with the Philippine ambassador?
No, she was, we're talking about two different things. There's the Philippine embassy here in Washington, DC, where there would be the Philippine ambassador to the United States. And Chris was featured as their speaker during Women's History Month. I don't know, a year or so ago, whenever it was. Then there is the Philippine, I don't know whether he's called ambassador or representative, or he leads the delegation to the United Nations, which is a totally different person. Right. And Carol and I met when we were the first year I was there, we met that person, the Philippine. So there's two different delegations here, one to the United Nations and one to Washington, DC. And somewhere I had a card for her. I don't know if I still have it of the person. I don't know whether I have it in my email who she is, but I can search it.
But anyway, that's something, and even maybe through Cecilia Hoffman, we could make contact with Philippine government as well. So I thought, yeah.
They are called ambassadors to the United Nations.
They are ambassadors to the United Nations.
They're called, the office is called an ambassador.
Yeah, okay.
All right, we're coming up, but we're getting close to an hour and a half. This has been, I'm in my mind, I'm gradually focusing in, and I hope the rest of you are too, on some things we can do. I really like the idea of focusing on things we know, and climate change and empowerment, economic empowerment as well, leadership and looking for those openings, because that's where we could be of use to others, and get our voice. Um, and women's major group, the goals, yes, we have much to research, but I think that there are ways to focus and ways to work. We have scheduled a meeting on the 10th, which is a Friday instead of a Thursday, in 2 weeks. I hope that everyone here will come to that, because I think we can do a better job of just sort of focusing our what we are our next step. All that you have taught us, it is going to be up on our website as something that other people can access. But also thank you for this session of just sort of pulling us through to some focus on what we can do.
Carol, did you have a chance to ask Bruce about which major group we should be working?
I haven't talked to him yet. I will before the next meeting. Yes.
And
Yes,
Carol, this next meeting, is that the CSW committee?
Yes.
Okay.
But anybody here should please plan to attend that. It's not a fixed list committee. It can
And
fluctuate.
it's not a closed group. Anyone can come at any time, right?
I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
So
right.
yeah, for the women's major group, anyone can be part of the major group without having, you can sign up as a person or as an organization. So you have both of those.
And and I think it wouldn't hurt if a couple of us did sign up for that between now and the next meeting and begin to look at the resources there. As we agreed before, we would need board approval to sign up for it as an organization, but we can make that recommendation if we've looked at it a bit. So
we can sign up to be on a listserv for information, basically, is what you're suggesting.
yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And Carmen, I want to thank you for the whole series, because what I take from it is that we should just begin. And whatever first steps we take, it will lead us onward to become involved. And I like the way you've made that clear. That we do have something to offer if we just start and go on.
I think we've
So
started.
What?
I think we've started. I think
we have, but this is encouraging us to go on to a different step that we didn't realize. I mean, I didn't realize it anyway, so thank you.
So, well, my final suggestion would be to conform a group, a team that's going to follow the UN and the UN negotiations, and that can all support either if you want to send the stories, either if you want to participate in the meetings, either if you want to do statements, either if you want to organize workshops or anything around that. It's, I do think that it's important to contribute to multilateralism and not only leave the governments, but also try to bring our voices to the table. And it's not that hard when you know the way, but of course, beginning, it's a little bit hard. But I think we are more than half the way there. So it's a question of like building a team, putting some activities, not overloading ourselves with work with UN, because it also can just make us forget our other tasks. So it's important to have our tasks and also see how we can put our projects or our visions or our points of view in UN to contribute. But unless someone is really passionate about that, shouldn't be a full-time job.
Right.
Well, and thank you for coming,
Thank you.
listening to me, and yeah. I'm happy. I'm really happy to be able to to engage with you in this process.
Well, thank you, Carmen. You are very inspiring for us and very important to have your view to encourage us to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. I really learned a lot.
Well,
Yes,
okay.
thanks so much.
All right. I hope to see you all on the 10th of February. So,
The 10th of
Take care.
February.
yeah. Oh, February, no, September.
September.
During COVID, I've sort of forgotten.
Maybe the 10th of
where I
February
am.
too.
Oh,
But
I don't know.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thanks again, Carmen.
10th of
and
September.
see
See you
you
soon.
all.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.